Hey guys, tonight we slip down into the bowels of a medieval prison. It's dark before your eyes even adjust. The torchlight flickers against damp stone walls, casting twitching shadows that look far too alive. You're barefoot. The floor is slick. And the door, it groans shut behind you with the finality of a life sentence. No click, no key. Just the awful silence afterward that feels heavier than the chains waiting in the corner. You're not in for murder, or theft, or anything remotely fair, really. You're here because someone powerful didn't like your tone, or your land, or maybe it was just your face. Either way, you've been escorted by some rather cheerful guards into a place where time stands still and hygiene gave up centuries ago. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me where you're watching from, and what time it is where you are. I always love knowing who's drifting off around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The walls breathe cold air down your neck. You try to step forward, but there's barely enough space to turn around. You scrape your shin against something sharp, a bone. No, just a broken chain link rusted into the wall, probably from the last unlucky guest. You flinch because your imagination does the rest. What was he chained here for? Who left him? There's a smell. It hits you slowly, like soup left too long on the stove. Not sharp, just cloying. Mold. Wet fabric. Sweat long soaked into stone. A medieval scent candle titled Despair, basically. You find your spot. It's not marked, but the rats seem to have claimed the good corners already. The floor is layered in straw, but calling it bedding would be generous. It crunches underfoot, and a cloud of dust or something less poetic rises around you. You sit, because you don't really have options. It's hard to believe prisons weren't always this formal. In early medieval Europe, jails weren't even places of punishment. They were holding cells just somewhere to stash you until a judge got bored enough to see you. But as the centuries passed, holding turned into rotting, and rotting became the whole point. Now the cell is the sentence. Historians still argue whether medieval dungeons were truly widespread or just sensationalized by later writers. But there's no debate that when they did exist, they were worse than Hollywood ever dared. You run your hands over the wall, half out of boredom, half to steady yourself. The stone is rough cold and alive with moisture. Tiny rivulets drip through cracks. You follow one with your finger until it disappears into a hole. That hole, you realize, has eyes in it. Tiny, glinting, hungry eyes. A rat stares back at you like you've interrupted his dinner plans. You blink first. Overhead, a barred hole lets in something approximating daylight. Just enough to taunt you with the idea of sky. The shaft doubles as ventilation and garbage chute depending on your luck. You'll learn soon enough not to stand under it. The guards don't speak when they pass. Not to you anyway. They might grunt. They might whistle something that sounds like a tavern song if it weren't in such poor taste. But they don't speak because they don't have to. You're not a person anymore. You're furniture. Damp, whining, disposable furniture. You wonder how long you'll be here. Days, weeks, a lifetime. The answer is both vague and deeply unhelpful. Medieval record-keeping was spotty at best, and for prisoners it often wasn't worth the ink. Some inmates were forgotten entirely. Some went mad waiting for a trial that never came. Some just became part of the decor. The light changes. You assume it's getting late because your cell goes from murky to cave. A bell rings somewhere far off, and the echo filters down like a rumor. Maybe Vespers. Maybe dinner, though you're not holding your breath. Your stomach growls in protest, and you try to remember your last real meal. It wasn't here, obviously. The welcome spread included a hunk of bread that could double as a doorstop and something that might have once been cheese or soap. It's hard to tell when everything tastes like mildew. You lean against the wall and close your eyes. Not to sleep, not yet, just to retreat inward a little. You think of your old life. Maybe you had a cottage, or a stall in the market. Maybe a dog that barked too much. Whatever it was, it's behind you now, sealed up like a chapter you don't get to reread. And then you hear it. Down the hall, past the rows of other cells, past the silence and groans, a laugh. A single, loud, cracked laugh. It bounces off the stone like a ghost looking for company. You shiver. Not because it's cold, though it is, but because you realize you're not alone in your misery. You're part of something much bigger now. A quiet, miserable community of the forgotten. The guy 2 cells down is humming. Someone upstairs is crying, soft, steady, resigned. And somewhere someone else is laughing because there's nothing else left to do. You lay back in your straw, adjust your position to avoid the worst of the poking bits, and let your mind drift not too far. Just enough to stay warm inside your head. Sleep won't come easy, not here. But it will come. Eventually. It always does. Chains, rags, and rotten bread. You learn quickly that comfort is a luxury and mold is a main food group. You wake up with a sore neck and a new appreciation for the word stiff. The straw has turned into a mat of flattened twigs under your weight. Your shoulders ache from the uneven stone wall that served as a pillow, and your legs are curled up like you're trying to fold yourself into a basket. Spoiler, you don't fit. Your cell smells even worse in the morning. The air is thicker like someone tried to bottle last night's sweat and opened it just for fun. You sit up slowly, bones clicking like an old door hinge, and spot your breakfast, or what passes for it. A guard has slid something across the floor, and it now lies motionless in a puddle. It's bread. Technically. But bread isn't supposed to be green around the edges, and it shouldn't sound like a rock when it hits the ground. You pick it up and give it a sniff. Mold. Lots of it. A variety of shades, actually your own little ecosystem. Congratulations, you're a farmer now. There's also a cup. The liquid inside is brown. Possibly ale, possibly something collected from the roof. You sip cautiously and immediately regret it. It's both sour and lukewarm, 2 adjectives that should never go together in anything edible. You lean back and chew the driest corner of the bread. Your teeth protest, but your stomach doesn't care. Hunger changes your standards fast. Yesterday you'd have thrown this to the pigs. Today it's breakfast in bed, minus the bed. Around your wrists you notice raw skin scraped from the iron shackles that hang loosely when the guards aren't in a mood. They don't bother to chain you all the time, but they like to keep them visible. It's a reminder, like a leash hanging by the door. You're not free, just momentarily unfastened. The rags you're wearing used to be clothes, maybe even yours. It's hard to tell anymore. They cling to you in damp patches, stiff with dirt and old sweat. There's a tear across the knee and a sleeve that's only half attached. You look like you lost a fight with a scarecrow. And yet, there's a weird kind of hierarchy even in here. Some prisoners get better rags, softer straw, cleaner chains. You overhear someone say it depends on your family name or if the guard recognizes you from church. One guy gets actual cloth. He says he used to be a clerk. You hate him just a little. You shuffle to the wall and try to stretch. Your joints pop and you hear someone cough violently down the corridor. That same racking cough echoes through the prison every morning. like a kind of alarm clock no one asked for. Sometimes it ends in silence. Sometimes it doesn't. Medieval prisons were overcrowded, underfunded, and completely unsupervised. If the local sheriff ran out of money to feed you, well, tough luck. There were cases where prisoners starved simply because no one remembered to bring food. The church ran some prisons too, but holy doesn't always mean merciful. More on that later. You pull your tunic tighter, if only for the illusion of warmth. It's always damp, always, even in summer. The stone sweats at night, and the air never dries. Your toes are pale and wrinkled like you've been swimming too long, except this pool is misery. And the smell, oh, the smell. You try to get used to it, but every few minutes it surprises you again. It's not just one odor, it's a symphony of decay. Human sweat, rat droppings, mildew, vomit, the occasional whiff of something far worse. You breathe shallowly, but that only delays the inevitable. Historians still argue whether prisoners were actually fed by the state or relied entirely on charity. In some areas, family members could bring you food if you had any left on the outside. If not, you begged from fellow inmates or hoped a kind monk had leftovers. Spoiler monks weren't known for lavish lunches. The guard walks by again. He kicks something into your cell, another crust of bread maybe, or just a rock. You can't tell. He whistles as he goes. You try not to make eye contact. Last time you did, he decided to search your cell. You still don't know what he was looking for, but he took your one decent sock. You overhear someone talking about their dreams last night. Not hopeful dreams, just strange ones. A feast where the chickens talk. A river of wine. A dog that turns into a king. Dreams are important in here. They're the only time your mind gets to walk away for a bit. You spend most of your day waiting for what you're not sure. A trial, a visitor. A clean breeze, you count the rats for fun. There's one with a nick in its ear that seems particularly confident. You name him Cedric. He's your only cellmate who doesn't complain. It's strange what becomes precious in here. A dry patch of wall, a clean fingernail, a joke that actually lands. Someone scratched a face into the stone above your head. You stare at it for hours. Is it a saint, a self-portrait? The last prisoner's only legacy. There's a soft noise cloth against stone. You look up and see a girl in the next cell over. She's not speaking, just staring. You nod. She doesn't nod back. But you both sit in that mutual silence for a while, and it feels like a conversation. You think of bread again. Real bread, with steam rising from the crust. The kind you tear open and it makes that perfect crunch. You miss butter and meat and spoons, even just eating without using your hands. You curl back into the straw, close your eyes, and imagine a soft bed. You don't picture your old one. You go further. A bed with feathers, sheets so clean they smell like lavender. Someone reading to you by candlelight. A window open to the breeze. It helps, a little. And then Cedric the rat scurries over your foot, reminding you exactly where you are. No toilets, just torture. The corner bucket's full, the guards are bored, and you're next for questioning. You wake up needing to relieve yourself. It's not a polite need. It's an urgent, undignified, full-body protest. You shuffle to the darkest corner of your cell, where the smell's strongest, and where the prison's most luxurious amenity awaits the bucket. Now, bucket may be too generous. It's more of a wooden excuse for plumbing splintered around the rim and already filled to what could only be described as historically unacceptable levels. You hesitate, but your body doesn't. The slosh echoes embarrassingly, and for a moment you're grateful there's no audience. But then you remember the guards hear everything. They just choose when to listen. You slide the bucket back into its reeking corner and try not to think about the fact that no one's emptied it in at least a week. Maybe 2. And that's not just your contribution in there. Medieval prison sanitation wasn't just bad, it was medieval. Waste removal was whenever we remember or never. In some underground cells, the filth literally piled up to the knees. You sit back down breathing through your mouth, which is no better, honestly. You're adjusting. You hate that. Then you hear it. Keys jangling, boots scraping stone. Laughter that doesn't sound joyful, it sounds hungry. The guards are coming, and this time they stop outside your door. One coughs. The other unlocks the latch with deliberate slowness. They step in. You stand purely on instinct, even though your legs protest. You ask what's happening. They don't answer. You already know. Time for questioning, one of them finally says. But it's not a question. They grab your arms, no ceremony, no explanation. You're yanked out into the corridor. It's colder here somehow. Air moves in narrow currents, sweeping past open doors and whispering through cracks in the walls like it's gossiping about you. They drag you to a room that's far too bright. Lit by several torches and one long window, this is the torture chamber. Or, as they prefer to call it, the chamber of inquiry. Sounds better, doesn't it? In theory, torture wasn't always legal in medieval Europe. But theory is such a soft, cuddly thing, isn't it? The truth is, if someone wanted you to talk, they'd find a way to make it happen. You're pushed into a wooden chair. No back. No cushion. Just cold oak with iron clamps where your arms now rest. You're not restrained yet. But the suggestion is clear. The room smells like old leather sweat and the unmistakable copper tang of dried blood. You glance around. A rack sits against one wall. A set of thumb screws on the table. Hooks hang from the ceiling, still swinging faintly from their last use. One guard picks up a small whip and tests it across his palm like he's warming up for a recital. Here's a fun historical fact to distract you. The medieval inquisitors believed that truth lived inside the body and that pain was the key to letting it out. Logical right. Who needs evidence when you have hot pokers and an overactive imagination? A man enters, not a guard. He's dressed better somewhere between a monk and a bureaucrat. This, you assume, is your interrogator. He doesn't introduce himself. Just looks at you like you're a soup he's not sure he wants to eat. What did you say to the bishop? He finally asks. You blink, bishop. Oh. The argument in the market. You said he looked like a stuffed goose. It was a joke. People laughed. Apparently he didn't. You try to explain to laugh it off, but your voice sounds ridiculous in this room. Everything sounds ridiculous in this room. The walls are too good at listening. The interrogator nods. Not in agreement, just acknowledgement. Then he lifts a hand and gestures. The guards move faster now. One tightens your wrist clamp. The other ties your ankles to the chair legs. Your heart speeds up not just from fear, but from the sheer absurdity. You're about to be tortured because you insulted someone's hat. But here's the kicker, this might be one of the lighter sessions. Torture wasn't always blood and screaming. Sometimes it was psychological. Sleep deprivation. Freezing temperatures. Food denial. You'd be amazed how fast your brain melts when it's kept hungry and wet for days on end. Historians still argue whether torture yielded reliable confessions or just loud ones. But that didn't stop its popularity. The church used it. Kings used it. Even city councils got creative with it. There were rules, technically, but they were about as effective as a raincoat in a waterfall. The guard tilts your chair back, suddenly lifting your feet off the ground. You flail. You hate that you're flailing. It gives them something to laugh at. The interrogator steps closer and lowers his voice. He says you can avoid this. Just confess. Say you planned to slander the bishop. Say you plotted against the church. Say something they can write down. But you didn't. And you don't want to say you did. Not yet. They begin. It starts with the ropes, tightening. Just a bit. Then more. Your joints scream. Your fingers go numb. The pain is oddly clean at first, like it wants to introduce itself politely before things get serious. You shut your eyes and imagine the bucket back in your cell. The moldy bread. Cedric the rat. Anything to anchor you. They press. They mock. They wait. Eventually you say something. It's not true, but it makes the session end. They nod, satisfied. The guards loosen the ropes and haul you back up like a puppet with broken strings. You're dumped unceremoniously outside the door and told to walk. You don't really walk. You stumble. You slide. You crawl a little. Back in your cell, you collapse onto the straw and stare up at the scratched face on the wall. It stares back unchanged. Maybe it understands. Maybe it's just stone. You can't move your arms. You don't try. You just lie there breathing shallowly, hoping the next time the guards come they forget you exist. Sleep creeps in again, like fog over a battlefield. Crime irrelevant. You're just here. You discover many prisoners were never charged. Some just annoyed the wrong monk. Time moves oddly in here. There's no clock, no sunbeam you can track across the floor. No schedule beyond the scrape of footsteps and the occasional clang of something being dropped, or someone. You count breaths. You count drips from the ceiling. You count rat sightings. But eventually, even the rats get bored of being interesting. A few days, maybe a week, have passed since your questioning. Your wrists still ache. One hand is swollen and you've lost some feeling in 2 fingers. You assume it's fine. After all, if it were gangrene, you'd know by now. Right? A voice from the next cell mutters something. You lean closer, pressing your ear to the wall. I never even got a hearing. The voice says, hoarse but steady. Just taken. My sheep wandered onto Abbeyland. That's all. You pause. Sheep, you whisper back. 2 sheep, he answers. Stupid creatures. Monks said I trespassed. Called it heresy. Do I look like a heretic to you? You consider the question, but since you can't see him, you offer the safest answer. No. He laughs. Or coughs. It's hard to tell. This is how you learn the truth. Crime doesn't matter here. Justice is more of a hobby. Trials are optional. If someone with a title, a robe, or a sword decides you're inconvenient, you disappear. One girl across the hall was imprisoned because she sang too loudly at Mass. Another man muttered something about taxes. No one checked. No one asked. They were taken anyway. Accused doesn't mean guilty, and guilty doesn't mean anything at all. You start hearing more stories. The walls have ears, but they also have mouths. People talk to pass the time or to keep from unraveling. One man says he's been here 5 years without a formal charge. He's not even angry about it anymore, just confused. He keeps a tally of days on the wall. He might be right, or off by 3 years. Back in the free world, legal systems are evolving. In England, trial by jury is becoming a thing slowly. Inquisitorial courts are growing on the continent. But in here, nothing grows but mold and hopelessness. Historians still debate how common these indefinite detentions were. Some argue they were rare and exaggerated by dramatists. Others point to dusty records of people held pending judgment who were simply never judged. Either way, it wasn't the crime that landed you here. It was someone's mood. Take Brother Oswald, for example. A minor monk with a major ego. You met him once in the market before all this. He spilled wine on your tunic, and you made a joke something about holy spirits being clumsy. He didn't laugh. He didn't even blink. Just stared at you like you were a stain on his soul. Now you think back. Was it him? Was that really all it took? You'd laugh, but your mouth's too dry. You cough instead. It echoes oddly off the cell wall and triggers a chain reaction, more coughs from down the corridor, then silence. Your neighbor resumes talking. They don't need a reason, he says. Not a good one. Not even a bad one. Just something. A look. A rumor. A missing chicken. The wrong hat. You believe him. One guard told you once during a particularly dull inspection that the bishop once jailed a man for smiling at the wrong time during a sermon. Claimed it was mockery. The man's teeth were rotten and crooked, probably just grimacing, but they locked him up anyway. There's a term people whisper in here in Perpetualia. It means indefinite detention. Not a sentence, not a punishment. Just stuck. You're not free, not convicted. Just warehoused like a forgotten barrel of apples slowly going soft. You think back to your old life. Maybe you were a craftsman, a merchant, a poor but happy farmer. You had things, people, a favorite mug even. Now all you have is a scratchy tunic, a bucket of horror, and a rat named Cedric, who is getting way too comfortable using your foot as a stepping stone. Still, there's a strange comfort in knowing it wasn't just you. Misery loves company after all, and this dungeon is full of very relatable people who once thought themselves safe. One woman 3 cells over used to be a midwife, accused of witchcraft after a stillbirth. No evidence, just fear. No trial, just here. You ask her name once. She doesn't answer. But the next day you find a small, neat symbol scratched into the stone wall near your corner. A star, maybe, or a flower. You decide it's a flower. There's a silent camaraderie forming. No talking all the time, but shared glances, tapped signals, the occasional traded crumb or word. No one is okay, but no one is alone. One afternoon, judged by the faint warmth from the ceiling hole, a commotion erupts. A new prisoner, young, barely more than a boy, screaming all the way in. The guards laugh as they shove him into a cell. He keeps yelling, "What did I do? What did I do?" You know better than to answer. But you whisper anyway. You existed. Later you try to sleep. The straw smells worse tonight, like something died in it, which, let's be honest, is entirely possible. You turn over facing the wall. That etched face stares back. You talk to it now. Not out loud, not quite. But in your head it's become something. A friend. A mirror. A prayer. You ask it how many people sat here before me, how many knew why, how many didn't. It doesn't answer. It never does. But still you sleep. Rats, cats, and fleas. The cell's other residents don't pay rent, but they sure do feast. You are not alone in your cell. You've known that since the first night, of course. But now it's official. The scratching is louder, the whiskers bolder, and something just bit your ankle. Again. Welcome to the real rulers of the dungeon, the rats, the cats sometimes, and the fleas. None of them were invited, and none of them are leaving. Cedric the rat. Your early companion is still around, but he's not alone anymore. He's brought friends. A lot of friends. You spot at least 3 different sizes of rat in one evening, and you swear one of them winked at you. They dart in and out like they own the place. Which, let's face it, they kind of do. The rats are organized. They know which cells have crumbs, which prisoners drop food, which ones are too sick to swat. You once watched them take turns dragging a moldy bit of bread like it was some royal procession. You didn't stop them. You respected the teamwork. But then came the fleas. At first it's just an itch on your wrist, then another on your neck. Then your whole body becomes a map of tiny red welts. You scratch until your skin flakes. You slap your arms and legs like you're trying to put out a fire. It doesn't help. You try sleeping on the straw. They're in the straw. You try the corner. They're in the corner. You try sitting upright against the wall. Somehow they're there too. It's as if the fleas were installed here, part of the prison package. There's a theory floating among the inmates that the fleas are watching, reporting back to some flea king who will one day judge us all. You don't believe it, obviously. But you're tired and itchy, and a little humor goes a long way in a place where laughter is currency. Then one night, something new, a yowl. Not human, not rat, a cat. It saunters into view through the bars, tail-high eyes gleaming like moonlight off polished daggers. It looks far too well-fed to be here on accident. Turns out some guards encourage the cats. They pretend it's for pest control, but mostly they just like the entertainment. A good rat chase breaks up the monotony. You watch as the cat stalks along the corridor, pauses, pounces. A screech, a squeak, a crunch. Applause from one of the guards. The cat ignores you. You're not interesting, just part of the furniture. But the rats. Oh, they run now. Cedric vanishes for a full day. You almost miss him. Historians still argue whether cats were formally introduced into prisons or simply found their way in. Some records suggest guards brought them as mascots, or disturbingly as temporary food. Others believe they just followed the trail of rodents and despair. Either way, they're here, and they're the only things that move freely between cells. You try to pet one. Bad idea. It slices your finger open with a disinterested swat and walks off. That night you suck the cut clean and hope for the best. Medical care in here, not a thing. Meanwhile, the fleas feast with renewed vigor. You overhear a prisoner 2 cells over talking about how they keep warm. They say fleas raise your body temperature with all the bites. Nature's little blankets, they call them. You're not sure whether to laugh or cry. There's a new prisoner nearby, an older man who hasn't said a word since arriving. One morning he erupts into a frenzy, screaming and clawing at his skin. The guards drag him out, and he never returns. You hear whispers that he tried to boil himself clean in the kitchen cauldron. Didn't work. Boiling isn't recommended even for fleas. You scratch until you bleed. You try not to, but it's constant. You invent games to distract yourself. Count the bites. Name each one. Bitey, Itchbert, Sir, Scratch-a-lot. There are dozens, hundreds, a whole court of parasitic nobility. Fun fact, fleas were probably the most dangerous inmates of all. They carried plague, bubonic, Black Death, the kind of horror that made even kings tremble. Here in your filthy little cell, you start to wonder how many of these fleas are just itchy, and how many are little messengers of doom. You try to talk to the guard, beg for something, anything, a scrap of cloth, a bowl of water, soap maybe. He laughs. If you want a bath, he says, ask the rats. They swim more than you do. You smile politely. Internally, you plot his flea-related revenge. You notice that the rats don't even try to hide anymore. They run through the cells at night like tiny landlords doing rounds. They fight too. Sharp squeals and the slap of little bodies hitting stone. You hear one die. The silence after is worse than the noise. Cedric comes back. He's missing part of his ear now. You nod at him. He ignores you, but you pretend it's gratitude. You learn to live with the infestation. Or rather, you forget what it's like to be clean. You dream of warm water, soap that smells like herbs, a towel, a comb. You wake up with a flea in your mouth. You don't scream. You just spit and go back to staring at the wall. There's a message scratched into the stone below the flower symbol. You never noticed it before. It says in shaky Latin, "Even vermin fear light." You smile. You don't know why, but you sleep easier that night. Not better, just easier. Jailers who moonlight as psychopaths. Your keeper takes your last copper coin, then accidentally forgets to bring dinner. You hear him coming before you see him. The limp, the jangle of keys, the wheeze that sounds like a dying bellows. It's feeding time loosely defined, and your jailer is doing his usual performance: slow steps, dramatic pauses, and the occasional muttered insult under his breath, just loud enough for you to hear. His name, as far as you know, is Rule, or Rolf, or maybe just the man who smells like bad decisions. No one says it to his face, of course. He carries a club the way others carry gossip, ready to share at a moment's notice. Today he stops in front of your cell and squints at you through the bars, like he's trying to remember whether he owes you a favor or a bruise. "You got anything for me?" he asks. You hesitate. He's not talking about information or gratitude. He's talking about stuff. Bribes, trinkets, coins, anything shiny enough to make him pretend you're worth remembering. You reach under your straw mat and pull out your final copper coin. It's misshapen and crusted with green from age, but to him, it gleams like gold. He takes it without thanks, nods once, and moves on. No food today. No stale bread, no rotten stew, not even that miserable brown water. You call after him, but he doesn't look back. He forgot, you realize. Again. Rule is one of those jailers you read about in grimy little footnotes of history. The kind who could have been a tailor or a cook or a carpenter, but instead chose to be the gatekeeper of other people's misery. And somewhere along the way, he stopped seeing prisoners as people. You once heard him laugh, really laugh, when a man in the next cell begged for water. Not mockery, not cruelty, just amusement, as if the man had asked for perfume and a feather bed. Later you discover Raoul's little racket. He sells things, not to you. From you. A ring you lost during arrest. Sold. A comb someone's wife tried to smuggle in, gone. That fancy-looking rock one prisoner claimed was a relic, out the door by nightfall. Rule runs a business, and we're all unpaid suppliers. Historians still argue how common this kind of corruption was in medieval prisons. Some claim it was the exception. Others point out the complete lack of oversight meant it was probably standard operating procedure. After all, who's going to report the guard when the only person who visits is a rat? The day after your missing meal, you get something new, a bucket of water. Not for drinking, for cleaning. Rule drops it by your cell with a smirk. Wash your conscience, he says. You're not sure whether it's a joke or if he's just forgotten what words mean. You use the water anyway. It's gray and full of floating bits, but you splash your face. It feels cold, real, almost like dignity. Then you notice Cedric sipping from the bucket. You sigh and let him have it. Later that day, Rule returns. This time, he's in a mood. You don't know why. Maybe someone called him short. Maybe his stew was too watery. Maybe he just likes hurting people on Thursdays. He stops at your cell and rattles the bars. Didn't like your manners yesterday, he says. You didn't say anything yesterday. Thought you were too good to thank me for the cleaning water, he adds. Right. He unlocks the door, steps in and stands over you. The club's still on his belt, but he doesn't need it. His words do the bruising now. He talks for a while. Mostly nonsense. Some rant about how prisoners should smile more. How you all used to be grateful. He says he remembers a time when people feared their jailer. Admired him even. You nod. Because not nodding is worse. Then he leaves. Doesn't touch you. Doesn't take anything. That's the game. Sometimes you wish he would hit you, just so there's a bruise. Something visible. Something to explain the weight in your chest. Instead, it's all petty power. Food withheld, water tainted, buckets knocked over, straw stolen. One man said Rule once removed a prisoner's only blanket, then returned it the next day, soaked in cold stew. Smells like dinner, he said. Huh. Some guards are better. One, a younger man with sad eyes, once tossed you an extra heel of bread. He did it quickly. No eye contact. Like he was afraid the walls would rat him out. The next day he was reassigned. Or disappeared. No one's sure. You start to realize that your jailer's behavior has its own calendar. Mondays are indifferent. Tuesdays, cruel. Wednesdays, he doesn't show. Thursdays are for lectures. Fridays, he sings. Not well, but loud. You think he's lonely sometimes. But then you remember the joy in his eyes when someone cries and the thought disappears. He once said, "You people have it easy. You just sit there. I have to work." You didn't respond. You were too busy trying not to vomit from the soup he left, if that was soup. You're still not sure. There's a man 2 cells down, no one knows his name. He tried to bribe Rule once with a gold tooth. Offered to pull it out on the spot. Rule took it, then told everyone it was tin and tossed it in the dung bucket. You wonder how long he's been like this. Whether prison changed him or if he came this way. Built for cruelty. Thriving in a job where empathy is a liability. You fantasize sometimes about escape. Not just from the cell, but from him. From his voice, his keys, his smug little whistle. But you know the bars aren't going anywhere. Neither is he. You curl up in your straw that night, empty-bellied and sore-throated, and listen to him hum a song in the distance. It's off-key, but happy. You close your eyes and dream of a world where people like him don't get keys. Punishment as public theater. You're dragged outside for a little light humiliation, your neighbors cheer. The day starts like most do. Your back aches, your mouth tastes like the bottom of a boot, and you're pretty sure a flea just claimed squatter's rights on your eyelid. Then the boots come. 4 pairs, all in a hurry, stomping down the corridor like they've got tickets to the theater, which in a way they do. You hear keys, a grunt. Then your door creaks open with theatrical flair. Up one of them barks. You start to rise, but they're not patient. Arms under your armpits. Yanks. You're dragged like a sack of vegetables into the corridor. One of your feet snags on a loose stone and you almost fall, but you're caught just enough to make sure you stay upright for now. No bruises yet. This show needs you pretty. They're taking you outside. That much is clear. And the worst part, you're not even surprised. The air shifts as you emerge into the courtyard. Sunlight stabs your eyes like judgmental spears. You squint, blinking furiously. It's the first real sky you've seen in weeks, maybe longer, and it feels both comforting and cruel, like an old friend who now works in tax collection. There's a crowd. Of course there is. Townsfolk soldiers, a monk or two, kids on tiptoes, women shielding their eyes with aprons. They're not here for justice. They're here for entertainment. You remember hearing once punishment in public was supposed to deter sin. A warning, a sermon in flesh. But you can tell by the way people nudge each other and laugh that it's never been about morality. It's a show. You're just today's episode. You're hauled toward the pillory, a sturdy wooden frame with 3 holes waiting to embrace your neck and wrists. Classic design, timeless really, a favorite in medieval towns across Europe. The wood smells like sweat and shame. And something faintly spicy, maybe last week's cabbage vendor punished for cheating customers. You try not to think about who was in it before you. Your head goes down. Wrists slide in. The top half slams shut with a thunk. You're locked. Displayed. Exhibit A, prisoner with poor timing and worse luck. The crowd gets louder, closer. Someone throws a turnip. Misses. Someone else has better aim. You feel it smack your shoulder with a wet thud. It's soft, overripe, still humiliating. You try not to react. You fail. The laughter gets louder. A boy throws mud. A girl hurls insults. An old man leans in and tells you a joke about fleas. You force a smile because somehow that was the least cruel thing all morning. Public punishment wasn't just for the guilty. It was for anyone who needed reminding, behave or you could be next. Pillories, stocks, whippings, even tongue piercings, each had its own schedule and audience. Historians still argue whether these punishments were more effective than imprisonment. But no one debates the crowds. People came. They always came, and sometimes they paid. There's a baker in the front row selling hot pies. You can smell them. Thick crust, buttery steam filled with something you can't name but desperately want. He gives one to a guard. The guard takes a bite, then wipes his greasy fingers on your shoulder as he passes. Lovely. Next comes the town crier. Not to announce anything important, mind you. He's just here to laugh. You've seen him before. His hat is taller than his morals. He leans close. Smile, prisoner. You're the best drama we've had all week. You grit your teeth. Then come the kids. Little feet scampering around you. Little voices daring each other to spit farther. You try to block it all out. Think of the wall back in your cell. The scratched flower. The rat who never judged you. But you can't escape the noise. The smell. The shame. Not today. A woman from the crowd steps forward and offers a crust of bread. You lift your eyes, hopeful. Then she drops it in the mud and laughs. The crowd laughs too. It's all a game. You're the board. In the back you spot someone not laughing. A man in dark robes, hands clasped, eyes closed, praying or sleeping. You don't know. You imagine he's praying for you. It helps, slightly. Time passes, slowly. The sun shifts overhead. Your neck aches. Your arms go numb. You drool a little and can't wipe it. Dignity left around turnip number 2. Eventually the guards return. Unlatch the pillory. You stagger out, legs wobbly, head swimming. The crowd's already drifting away. Their show is over. Time to go back to the real world. Laundry, bread, gossip. You don't exist again until the next performance. One guard claps you on the back too hard to be friendly. Good crowd today, he says. You did well. You say nothing. On the way back to your cell, you pass another prisoner being let out. Younger than you. Dirtier. His eyes are wide. He sees the mud on your tunic, the bruises on your neck, and knows what's coming. You nod at him. Not in sympathy, in solidarity. Back in your cell, you collapse. Cedric climbs over your knee, uninterested in your suffering. You lie back and let the silence press in. Tomorrow, they might bring you soup or rope. Either way, you'll be ready. You've performed before. The not-so-secret prisons of the church. You're moved to an ecclesiastical cell where silence is holy and rules are cruel. They come for you just after dusk, two men in brown robes silent as smoke. Not guards, not soldiers, monks. One carries a scroll, the other a ring of keys. Both wear the same look tight-lipped righteousness, as if they've already decided your soul is overdue for an audit. They don't say where you're going. They simply open your cell gesture and wait. You rise, slowly. Joints crack. Your legs wobble like half-cooked noodles. You say goodbye to the scratched flower on the wall. You leave Cedric behind. He watches you with the indifference of a landlord. You're led through a part of the prison you didn't know existed. Narrower corridors, fewer screams. The air changes. Less rot, more candle wax, and old incense. There's a different kind of quiet here. Not relief, restraint. You feel it in your ribs, like the walls are waiting for you to sin. And then your new cell. It's cleaner, technically. The floor is stone but dry. The straw is fresh-ish. There's a narrow slit of a window high above. And on the wall, a crucifix carved directly into the stone, its edges worn smooth by countless prayers or desperate fingers. This is no dungeon. It's the church's wing. And somehow, that makes it worse. See, church-run prisons or ecclesiastical cells weren't rare. Monasteries, abbeys, and inquisitorial councils all had their own rules, their own cells, their own punishments. And unlike the civil jails here, the crime wasn't just what you did, it was what you thought, or believed, or whispered after too much wine. Historians still argue over how humane these cells really were. Some records show monks feeding inmates, praying with them, even offering books to copy. Others describe brutal silence, starvation, isolation, and punishments so bizarre you wonder if God actually signed off on them. You sit on the stone bench provided. No straw mattress this time. No bucket either. When you ask about that, one monk replies, "Control your flesh, and it will not betray you." Cool. Thanks for the advice, Brother Constipation. Here, everything is a lesson. The silence is sacred. The hunger is cleansing. The rules endless. No speaking after dark. No eye contact during prayers. No humming tapping or spiritually excessive breathing. Yes, that's an actual quote. Your daily routine is regimented to the minute. Wake, pray, reflect. Sit, reflect again. Bread at noon, water at dusk. Confession never. You are not here to be forgiven. You are here to be reformed, to be reminded that sin begins in thought, and therefore your brain is the battleground. They assign you a penance book, not to read, just to hold. You're supposed to sit with it on your lap for hours and reflect on its weight. It's about as effective as hugging a goat to learn math, but they seem to believe in the process. One monk, older beard like frostbitten moss, comes to your cell every day at the same hour. Doesn't speak. Just stands there staring at you through the bars, lips moving silently. At first you assume he's praying. Later you suspect he's mouthing the sins he thinks you've committed. You try to speak to him once. Whisper a question. "How long will I be here?" He blinks, then walks away. Classic. Another monk brings food, sort of. A small bowl of something grayish-beige. It smells like boiled grain and sadness. Once it has a single dried plum in it. You take that as a sign you're on the brink of sainthood. One evening, a guard-turned-brother he still wears part of a chainmail glove leans in as he slides your bowl through the slot. You stole church silver, he says. You blink. What? He narrows his eyes. Why else would they move you here? You try to explain that. No, you insulted a bishop's hat, and maybe that one time you called a priest, Father, too much wine at the town well, but you definitely didn't touch any silver. He just shrugs. Intent counts. Intent. That's the theme here. You sit alone with your intentions all day. You question every memory. Did you roll your eyes during that sermon last Lent? Did you ever doubt that one miracle where a donkey quoted scripture? Did you secretly once envy the local friar's shiny sandals? Probably. You're in now. No getting out until someone deems your soul presentable. There are stories muttered between prisoners when no monk is nearby. One tells of a man who spent 7 years in an ecclesiastical cell for writing a joke hymn. Another served 10 because he touched a relic with unwashed hands. Then there are the whispers about women imprisoned in convent cells. Penance cloisters, they're called. Silence for life. Meals passed through rotating walls. Names erased. God's punishment with curtains. You sleep poorly. The silence isn't peaceful. It's loud. Your thoughts echo. Your regrets multiply. You miss the rats. You miss Rule's off-key humming. You even miss the turnips. At least in the civil wing, your suffering felt accidental. Here it feels intentional. You dream of walking out. Through the gate, into sun. No one stops you. The monks smile. You're free. You wake up still on the stone bench. The crucifix watches. The next day you try something different. You pray. Not out loud. Not with your mouth. Just a thought. It's messy. Disjointed. Half of it is just begging for cheese. But it's yours. You feel nothing. But you do it again. Because in a place like this, even a fake prayer is an act of rebellion. The dungeon economy. Need a blanket better trade that toenail collection. Yes, bartering was real. You're starting to understand something no one ever wrote down in a legal charter. Prisons aren't just places, they're little worlds. And like any world, they have an economy. Not the shiny kind with coins and contracts. No, this is the grunting, grimy, deeply personal kind. A barter system forged from boredom need, and the sheer absurdity of surviving in a pit where people use socks as currency. You first notice it when a man across the corridor offers to trade a scrap of his bread crust for your spoon. You don't have a spoon, of course. But that doesn't matter. The idea is what catches you, people are trading things. In a place where time barely moves and dignity evaporates faster than the stew stuff becomes power. Your first transaction, a fingernail clipping. It happens by accident. You'd been obsessively cleaning under your nails with a sliver of bone and managed to flick one across the corridor. A fellow prisoner, a wiry man named Garrett, snatches it up like it's gold. "I'll give you half my straw mat for 2 more, he says. You blink. "Why?" he shrugs. "Some like to chew 'em. Helps with nerves." You don't ask further. You do give him 2 more. Straw is straw after all. Welcome to the market. Soon you begin to notice the underground trade everywhere. Crumbs, rags, buttons, fish bones, even decorative beetles are up for grabs. Someone once bartered a prayer for a scrap of cheese. Someone else traded a love poem allegedly smuggled from a nun for a few drops of oil. The high-value items are obvious blankets, dry, straw-working chamber pots. But it's the weird stuff that really moves. A man named Halim has become something of a tycoon. No one's sure where he gets his wares. Some think he's bribing guards. Others claim he communicates with rats. He once brokered a deal involving 3 lice combs, half a rosary, and a dead bat, resulting in someone acquiring an almost new pair of underpants. Almost. There's a woman everyone calls her Mistress Guts who controls the dried fruit. No one messes with her. Rumor has it she once stabbed a man with a sharpened spoon over a prune. No one doubts it. You realize quickly that information is also currency. News from outside, rumors, guard schedules, who's sick, who's dying, who's escaping. Someone with a good ear can trade gossip for food. Someone with a sharp tongue can trade insults for protection. You once hear someone offer this deal. I'll tell you which monk wets himself during morning prayers, if you give me your blanket tonight. You don't make that trade, but you are curious. Historians still debate how developed these internal prison economies really were. Some argue that barter was spontaneous and informal, driven by desperation. Others believe it formed tight, organized systems, proto-black markets ruled by cell block cartels. Either way, what's clear is this people adapt, even in rags, even behind bars. One day, a new prisoner arrives with a tin cup. Everyone notices. Tin is gold in here. Doesn't rust. Holds heat. Won't break. He sleeps with it tucked inside his tunic, guarding it like a dragon's egg. Within a week, he's traded sips of hot water for scraps of sausage, a sharpened nail, and mysteriously, a single page torn from a romance novel. He doesn't speak much. Doesn't need to. The cup does the talking. You start bartering too, carefully. Your first success is swapping your silence during a guard's patrol. He'd stepped in something foul and didn't want the mockery for half a slice of apple. A real apple, dried and leathery but still fragrant. You chew it for a full 5 minutes. You weep, quietly. Then you trade a poem, one you made up, about a flea who became king and fell in love with a beetle. It wins you a threadbare cloth to use as a pillow. It's not just comfort on the line. These trades are social glue. You learn people's names, their stories, their hopes, as absurd as they sound. I'll open a bakery, one man says, nibbling on a crust that could double as roof tile. I'll marry the fishmonger's daughter. Another declares. She looked at me once. You listen. You nod. You trade a line from a song you remember in exchange for his half-wool sock. One man collects toenails. Not even for eating. Just collecting. You never ask why. But you do give him a few when he offers to let you borrow his spoon to dig out a new mouse hole near the wall, your favorite air vent. Totally worth it. Some items have emotional value too. A broken bead once blue. A chicken feather. A pebble that resembles a heart. A cloth stained with wine, real wine from a wedding long ago. And then there's protection. You hear of a guy who's hoarded enough scraps to hire a watcher, a neighboring prisoner who coughs loudly if a guard comes near during, let's say, delicate business. The church prisoners you hear trade confessions, real or invented. A story of lust gets you a hymn, a murder tale a loaf end. The more scandalous your sin, the better your reward. You consider inventing one involving 3 bishops and a goat, but decide to wait for the right crowd. Back in your cell, you begin your own inventory. You've got 1 pebble shaped like a bird, 2 pinches of salt from an old stew, 1 lice-free sock, questionable, a thread you pulled from your tunic, almost blue. You're not rich, but you're learning. You fall asleep that night with your thread tucked safely in a crack in the wall, dreaming of the day you trade it for half a turnip and a story about a nun who fled her vows to become a pirate. Anything is possible, especially in the dungeon economy. Disease as a sentence, you catch a sniffle, or is it plague? Either way, there's no doctor, just leeches. It starts with a sniffle. In any other life, you'd brush it off, just dust or damp, maybe the draft from that high little window slit, where the cold breathes in and out like a sleeping dragon. But in here, a sniffle is a sentence. At first, you try not to notice it. A little congestion, a light shiver. You wrap your arms around yourself, but it doesn't help. The damp in these walls isn't just a feeling, it's a curse. It settles in your bones, clings to your skin, and whispers in your ear all night long. The second day you cough. The third day the others hear it. And that's when it changes. You're marked now. Not officially, not with ink or chains, but in the way people shift away when they pass your cell. The way the guards move faster. The way silence falls just a little heavier around you. There's no doctor here. That's the first thing you learn. Well, unless you count Brother Ambrose, the former monk, who once read a medical tract and now prescribes boiled nettles and prayer. He once treated a broken rib by telling the patient to breathe more gently. The patient stopped breathing altogether 2 days later. You lie on your straw, sweating through your rags, and try to recall which disease this feels like. Is it just a cold? Is this what the flu was like back when it was still called the sweating sickness, or is it something darker? Your throat tightens. You remember the stories, the plague, Black Death, bubonic horror. It swept through towns like a broom dipped in nightmares, rats and fleas, swollen lymph nodes, corpses stacked in carts. Historians still debate how it got in and how it got out. But here, you don't need footnotes. You just need one sneeze. You cough again, harder. This time it echoes. No one responds. In the next cell, someone mutters a prayer. Across the corridor, Garrett, your nail-bartering friend, scrapes his back along the wall, shifting farther from your line of sight. You can't blame him. But it hurts anyway. The fever hits you that night. It's not a polite fever. Not a warm flush and a mild ache. It's the kind that drags you under like a sack of rocks tossed into a swamp. You sweat so much, your straw turns into a mushy stew. You shiver. Your teeth chatter. You hallucinate that the crucifix on the wall is winking at you. You wake briefly to find a bowl of something beside your foot. You have no memory of it arriving. Inside water. Maybe. Could be broth. Could be rat tears. You drink it anyway. You sleep again. Not the restful kind. The flickering kind. Dreams full of hands pulling at you, whispering nonsense. You dream that Rule the jailer kisses your forehead and tells you you're his favorite. That's when you know it's a nightmare. At some point, you feel something wet on your chest. You jerk awake and find a cloth. And next to you, Mistress Guts. She's cleaning your face with her sleeve. I've seen worse, she says flatly. You try to speak. Nothing comes out but a croak. You're not dying, she adds. You're just soft. She leaves behind a small pouch. Inside, something herbal, crushed and fragrant. You hold it to your face and breathe. You don't get better right away. But you don't get worse. Which in here counts as a miracle. Not everyone is so lucky. The man 2 cells down. He gets the same symptoms. By the 3rd day, he's delirious, screaming about angels. By the 5th, he's silent. By the 6th, his cell is quiet and too clean. The guards swept him away early in the morning. No one says where, but everyone knows. One guard jokes about leeches, says it used to be standard treatment. They'd slap leeches on you to balance your humors. You'd be weak sick and missing a pint of blood, but hey, at least your bile would be symmetrical. You laugh. Weakly, you dream of leeches that talk. Tiny voices with big opinions. You need less melancholy, one says, as it latches onto your elbow. You survive. Barely. But something shifts afterward. You're different now. Not just because of the cough that lingers like an ex who won't leave. You've joined something. A club. The survivors. You get nods now. Small, silent ones. From others who've made it through something fevered and horrible. It's not respect. It's recognition. Like matching tattoos, only yours is a wheeze and a haunted stare. You hear talk that the church wing had an outbreak recently. The monks denied it, of course. But one prisoner claimed to see carts carrying bodies out at dawn, covered in prayer cloths. Historians still argue about how much disease spread inside prisons versus outside. But they all agree once it was inside, there was no stopping it. No medicine. No quarantine. Just whispers, prayers, and funerals no one attended. Sometimes the guards burn straw from a particularly foul-smelling cell. You smell the smoke and know what it means. You whisper a name you barely knew and hope someone whispered yours when they thought you were going. You never get a diagnosis, never a chart, never a "you're cured." You just stop shivering. The sweat dries. Your bones ache a little less. And one day you wake up hungry. It's the most beautiful feeling in the world. You trade a joke for a crust of bread, and you eat it like a king. Escape. A lovely idea. You meet the guy who tried to dig his way out. He still has the spoon. The idea comes to you during a coughing fit, midway between delirium and clarity. Your hunched-over eyes, watering lungs trying to leap from your chest when your hand brushes the cold stone wall beside you. It's not a special wall. It's not loose or cracked or carved with any helpful secret exit this way instructions. But still, the thought settles in your skull and refuses to leave. What if I got out? Escape. The word glows in your mind like candlelight in the dark. It's absurd, laughable. But that's exactly why it feels so good. You start noticing things. The corridor slope, the places the guards pause, the moment when the bells ring for mass and the footsteps disappear for just long enough. You tell no one, at first, until one day your bread comes late and with it, a whisper. Don't waste energy on fantasies, the prisoner across from you says. A wiry man with twitchy eyes and fingers stained with what you pray is dirt. They'll smell it on you. You say nothing, but he's already smiling. A thin, twitching smile like he's already seen your thoughts laid bare on the wall behind you. Then he lifts his spoon. It's small, dented. The bowl end is flattened, sharpened slightly at the edge. A tool, not a utensil. A poor man's dagger. A miner's chisel. A dreamer's wand. I tried, he says. Dug for 30 days under my straw. Got halfway to the hallway. You blink. What happened? They moved me. Why? Because I coughed, he says with a grin. Blessing in disguise, really. Saved me from crawling straight into the cesspit. You believe him. You also don't. Historians still argue how common escapes actually were. Records show a few brilliant ones, a disguised monk here, a bribed guard there, but for the average prisoner, digging through solid stone beneath foundations built like fortresses. It was like tunneling through a mountain with a fork. But the desire was real, and it fed on whispers. You ask him more, slowly, casually, like you're not already cataloging every word. He tells you about the time he made a grappling hook out of twisted straw and chicken bones. Didn't work. He broke his toe trying. About the woman who hid inside a laundry cart. Made it all the way to the outer gate until she sneezed. About a man who faked madness for 6 months, then walked out when they tried to transfer him to a convent. Got caught because he couldn't stop grinning. You listen like a starving man at a feast. But with each story you learn something vital everyone thinks about escaping. Almost no one gets far. And the ones who do, well, they don't exactly write home. You start scraping your wall. Just a bit. Behind the straw. A small patch maybe the size of your palm. It's softish. Or at least not actively mocking you. You use a nail at first, then a bone. Then eventually you trade 3 flea bites and a limerick to borrow the spoon for an hour. It's slow. So slow. You dig 2 inches, then cover it back up. Hide the dust. Brush away the shame. But the idea, that's what matters. The idea is what keeps you upright some days. Not justice. Not freedom. Just the possibility of possibility. You share a glance with Spoon Guy, whose name it turns out is Bram, and he gives you a knowing nod. He's not mocking you. He respects the effort, even if he knows exactly how it ends. Tunnel gods aren't kind, he mutters once, watching you with tired eyes. But they're better than the priests. One night you get close. The wall flakes more than usual. A small chunk falls away, revealing nothing. Just more stone. Slightly darker. Maybe slightly damper. You could cry. Instead, you lie back. Stare at the ceiling. You wonder if you did escape, then what? No money. No allies. No shoes. Most escapees are caught within a day. Some within hours. Few can outrun the dogs, or the cold, or the wilderness waiting outside indifferent and wide. But even so, a whisper floats down the corridor one night long after the last guard has passed. I heard someone made it last spring, dug under the wall, swam the moat, made it to the coast. You don't ask who said it. You just nod, because it might be true. And in here, might is everything. You catch Bram eyeing his spoon again. He hasn't traded it in months. He sharpens it sometimes. Not for violence. Just to keep the dream alive. A relic. A weapon. A key that fits no lock but still feels like escape. You sleep with your back to the wall now. Not because you're scared of someone finding your scratch marks, but because you're secretly proud of them. They're yours. Evidence that part of you still wants something more than survival. Something stupid. Something brilliant. Something free. Medieval prison hacks want extra food. Better memorize scripture. Want out, marry the jailer's daughter. It starts with a piece of cheese. Not a large piece. Barely a sliver, really. But in a place where the flavor wheel has 3 settings: moldy dirt and water, you'd swear it's gourmet. Sharp, salty, glorious. You don't know how it got to you at first. You just find it sitting in your bowl one evening. No note. No smug guard grinning at the door. Just cheese. You eye it suspiciously. You sniff it. You poke it like it might be alive. Then you eat it anyway, and your tongue remembers happiness. Later that night, you hear a voice from the next cell. Psalm 41, it whispers. You cough. What repeat it? You do. Clumsily. You barely remember the words. There's a pause. Then tomorrow repeat it again. Louder. And that's how you learn the first of many medieval prison hacks. Hack number 1: religion is currency. The church has hands everywhere. If you memorize scripture, really memorize it, and you recite it with a decent voice and enough dramatic pauses, you may just impress the right monk, or the wrong monk, who happens to have some bread to spare. Some prisoners even fake visions, claim to see angels in the mortar or saints in the shadows. You overhear a woman say she had a dream that Saint Bridget told her the rats were sacred. She got extra porridge for 3 days and a lecture about humility. Worth it. You try it cautiously. You whisper a line from Psalms during evening quiet. The next day your water comes with a crust of barley bread. Coincidence, maybe. But you repeat the experiment. You throw in a verse from Job. A guard nods as he passes. You've been noticed. Hack number 2. Clean is cunning. Most of your cellmates smell like regrets and mildew. So if you find a way to not smell like a compost pile, people take notice. You trade 2 lice-free hairs and a borrowed thumbtack for a single mint leaf. You chew it slowly before a guard's visit. He wrinkles his nose. You sick, you shake your head. He shrugs and walks away. The next day, your soup has a hint of carrot. You take that as victory. Hack number 3. The jailer's daughter. Every dungeon has a story about her. Sometimes she's real, sometimes not. But someone's daughter always becomes the legend. Pretty soft-hearted, curious about prisoners, tired of churchmen and pig boys. And in the right cell block, you'll always hear the whisper, "If you charm her, she might set you free." You hear that one prisoner years ago offered to write poetry in her name. She visited him twice. The third time, they caught him proposing with a bread crust shaped like a ring. They cut off his ear. Still, the story lives on. You start noticing which guards are friendlier. One has a limp and smiles at the prisoners who pray. You nod at him one day. He nods back. Progress. The next time he passes, he leaves a scrap of cloth in your straw. Wrapped in it, half a fig. Dried. Sweet. Real. You don't know if it came from his daughter, or his conscience. Or maybe he's just trying to trade guilt for kindness. You eat it anyway. Hack number 4. The long game. Some prisoners play it slow, very slow. They tell guards flattering stories. You have the posture of a knight, one says to a man who waddles. You remind me of Saint Sebastian, another tells the youngest monk. They laugh, but they remember. A week later, the flatterer gets an extra cloth to wipe his face. A month later, he's sweeping floors outside the cells. Sunshine on his skin. You ask him how he did it. Smile, he says. Even if your teeth are gone. Hack number 5. Create value. One prisoner sings, badly. But she knows every hymn. The monks tolerate her. Some even nod along. She earns extra bread. Another carves saints into stone with a sharp pebble. They're crude. They all look vaguely surprised. But the monks say it shows penitence. She gets cleaner straw. You start etching poetry on your wall. Quiet stuff. Things about hope. Rats. The smell of cheese. One guard stops to read. Doesn't say a word. But later you find your water bowl twice as full. Hack number 6. Fake a skill. I can read Latin, you claim once. You cannot. But no one double checks. Not here. The monk raises an eyebrow. Read this. You squint. My vision's gone poor in the dark. He nods solemnly. A tragedy. Next week he brings you a scroll. You pretend to squint with reverence. He leaves you a whole boiled egg. You eat it. Shell and all. Hack number 7. Be unforgettable. Not famous. Not loud. Just memorable. You learn to whistle a little tune. You hum it every time a certain guard passes. Eventually he hums it back. You become a part of his routine. That matters. It means you exist. In a place like this that's halfway to being human. Historians still argue whether prisoners actually pulled off these tricks, or if it's just romantic storytelling. But the scraps of evidence, the diaries, the letters, the receipts for extra food, tell us some inmates played the system like a liar. You sleep that night with your scriptural lines rehearsed, your mint leaf tucked under your rag pillow, and your spoon buried in the straw like treasure. You've got no key, no map, no outside help. But you do have cheese, a fake psalmist reputation, and maybe, just maybe, the attention of a man with a soft spot for humming. And that in here, that's power. Celebrity inmates and political prisoners. You overhear whispers from nobles locked up beside you, kings fall here too. It starts with a name you recognize not from the cells or the guards or whispered barters in the dark, but from before, from the world you left behind. A name spoken only in the kind of rooms with candlelit tapestries and servants who refill your wine without asking. You hear it as you're drifting off that soft space between waking and sleep. Count Alaric of Thorn. The name slips through the cracks between cells like fog. No one says anything else, just that. But it sticks. You sit up slowly. That name belonged to a man you once saw riding through your village, draped in crimson gold trim, catching the sunlight like a flame. He had 5 servants, 3 rings, and 1 hawk perched on his saddle, like it too held noble blood. And now he's here, in the cell next to yours. You almost laugh, but not too loudly. Because nobles don't stay in prisons, do they? They bribe their way out. They call in favors. They sigh dramatically, and someone hands them a warm cloak and a horse. And yet, Count Alaric is here. And he's not alone. You start paying closer attention. When food comes late, a voice down the hall complains, not with rage, but with dignity, like someone ordering wine that's 2 degrees too warm. This porridge, he says, offends the spirit and the tongue. The guard snorts, but delivers it anyway. Another day, someone requests a candle for reading. You'd scoff, but the next evening, the faint glow of wax flickers from under a door 3 cells down. You stare at it for hours like it's a shooting star. It becomes clear the rich, the powerful, the titled, they fall too. You just never imagined they landed this close. There's talk of a bishop imprisoned for heresy, aka siding with the wrong archbishop in a spat about fish during Lent. There's a knight who led a doomed rebellion, a noblewoman who tried to poison her husband, a cousin of the king who spoke too freely in the wrong tavern. Historians still argue about how common it was for elites to be imprisoned like common thieves. Some say these celebrity inmates were kept in cleaner quarters, given feather beds and ink to write sad poetry. Others insist that dungeons played no favorites when the church or the crown felt truly betrayed. What's clear from your cell is this status is no guarantee of mercy. Sure, some get extra bread. One might have a blanket. But they're still in cages, still cold, still scratching at walls and whispering into the dark. One evening you overhear something extraordinary. 2 voices, gentle clipped, clearly educated. They're playing chess, verbal chess. One lists moves, the other counters. Bishop to f4, knight to c6. It continues for nearly an hour. You close your eyes and imagine the pieces the board scratched into the stone with a spoon or a stolen nail. And suddenly, the prison becomes a court again, if only in the minds of two prisoners pretending to sit beneath stained glass instead of mildew. Later, one of them quotes Cicero, not to anyone, just softly, as if the walls deserve to hear it. The shifts of fortune test the reliability of friends. You whisper it to yourself 3 times. Memorize it. Own it. There are rumors of even higher names. A prince once held in secret beneath the chapel. A queen's advisor locked away for knowing the wrong secret at the wrong time. You start listening for code. When one prisoner says, "My garden has overgrown," does he mean real plants or political weeds? When another mutters, "The hawk has flown south," is he talking about actual birds or betrayal? You begin to realize power games don't end at the gate. They continue in here, just quieter, more whispered. Every cell is a chessboard. Every nod, every rumor, every scrap of cloth passed through bars could mean allegiance, manipulation, survival. You catch sight of a man once during a rare corridor shuffle. Tall, pale eyes sharp enough to cut glass. His rags are cleaner than yours. His posture is noble, even chained. He nods to a guard like they're old friends. The guard doesn't nod back. The man's name is never spoken aloud. But you know he's someone. You feel it. And more importantly, he knows it. He's not here forever. He's waiting. For someone. For a deal. For a war to end or begin. He's playing a longer game than rats and mold and bad porridge. You lie awake wondering what it's like to fall from that high. To lose velvet wine, feasts, and silken slippers, and trade it for a bucket, a slab of bread, and the sounds of someone crying in the next cell over. Then you realize they're wondering the same about you. Because for all your lack of titles, you're surviving. You've learned the barter tricks, the hymns, the hacks. You've named the fleas and earned your bread with stories. You're doing what they never had to do until now. One day, a noble's name disappears from the whispers. You ask around. Released, someone says. Ransomed, says another. No, says Bram with the spoon. Poisoned. In his stew. You don't know which story is true. But you do know the cell is empty. Later, you sit in silence, repeating Cicero's quote like a mantra. The shifts of fortune test the reliability of friends. And in here, fortune shifts like a prison rat, quiet, swift, and ready to bite. Execution day smells like porridge. Someone's number is up today. You get porridge. He gets the axe. The morning is quiet. Too quiet. You wake to the usual aches, the familiar scent of mildew and regret, and a strange stillness that creeps under your skin like a warning. Even the rats seem subdued, like they know something you don't. Then you smell it. Porridge. Not the usual slurry of grain mold and disappointment. This porridge has heat, real warmth. You can smell oats, possibly honey, something that smells faintly luxurious, almost festive. You sit up too fast and your head spins. Is it a feast day? A monk's birthday? Did the bishop die? Numb. You hear footsteps, 3 guards, one walking slower than the others, the one in the middle dragging his feet. You press your ear to the bars and listen. The hallway breathes. And then you hear it, the shuffling rhythm of chains, the murmur of a priest reciting scripture, and the sobbing. Not loud sobbing, not wailing, the quiet kind, the real kind, the kind where someone's already halfway out of their body. Execution day. You've never seen one, but you've smelled it. It's an odd medieval quirk. On the morning of a scheduled death, some prisons gave better meals, a last kindness, or as some historians suggest, a final reminder to the living, you get porridge today. He does not. You watch the steam rise from your bowl. It's thick, creamy. It looks like food. You can't not eat it. But you chew slowly, guiltily. Every bite heavy with the knowledge that someone else is walking their last steps barefoot through the mud. The condemned man passes your cell. You catch only a glimpse, young beard, patchy eyes swollen. He's flanked by 2 guards and 1 monk holding a cross like it might deflect mortality. No one speaks to him. No one meets his eyes. He doesn't look left or right. He just walks. You hear the door at the end of the hall open. The courtyard beyond it is loud. Too loud. The townspeople have gathered. Of course they have. Public executions are less justice and more carnival. You hear children's voices, laughter, someone shouting about the price of boiled eggs. The executioner is probably already out there warming up his axe with dramatic flourishes, maybe even practicing lines like an actor before curtain. You take another bite of porridge. It's sweet. Dates, maybe, or raisins. You chew slower. The monk in the next cell starts to sing a hymn. He's off key. It hurts. But you let him. Because what else is there to do? The condemned was, according to rumor, a thief, a liar, a rebel, a scapegoat. Depends on who you ask. Some say he stole bread. Others say he plotted against the Duke. One voice claimed he spat on a priest. Another says he was a priest just the wrong kind. Historians still argue over execution records from this era. Were they justice, spectacle, deterrent? Probably a bit of all 3. But what's clear is that the method varied often, depending less on the crime and more on the message. Today's method. The axe. Clean, public, rehearsed. You close your eyes. Outside, a bell rings. The priest's voice rises. A drum beat begins, slow, solemn, theatrical. Then, silence. The kind that holds its breath. You hold yours, too. And then the thunk. Not metal on metal. Not sharp. Heavy. A sound that lands in your chest and sticks there. Then the crowd roars. It's done. You breathe again slowly. Your porridge has gone cold. You don't finish it. You lie back on the straw and stare at the ceiling like it might hold answers. Part of you wonders what he thought about in those final moments. His family. A mistake he didn't make, a meal he missed, or maybe he just thought, let it be quick. There's no poetry in the end. Later, the guards return. They don't speak. But one of them moves differently, like the weight of the morning followed him back inside. You see the executioner pass by, still wiping his hands. Someone coughs 2 cells down. The moment has passed. The show is over. Life returns. But you don't. Not quite. That night, the dungeon is quieter than usual. Fewer jokes, less barter. Even Cedric doesn't scurry. As if everyone's afraid to make too much noise in the wake of death. You whisper a prayer, not for the dead man exactly, but for yourself, because you got porridge, and he got the axe. And that line between the two, so much thinner than anyone wants to admit. There's a moment when you realize you've stopped counting days. You don't remember when it happened. Maybe it was after the last execution, or the fever, or the 3rd time someone whispered about spring and you couldn't tell if they were serious or delirious. But time no longer moves. It drips. You wake, you eat or don't, you itch, you sleep, you listen to a rat squeak in the corner like it's reading bedtime poetry. You scratch another line on the wall, and then forget if it's supposed to be your 100th or your 200th. Your cell has become something else, not just a room, not a punishment. It's a tomb, and you're still breathing inside it. The walls have changed, not physically, but in how you see them. You know every crack, every mold stain, every place where the stone is smoother because your back's rubbed it raw. You don't look at the crucifix anymore. You look through it. You used to talk to the flower symbol. Now you just nod to it, like an old friend you've run out of stories for. The straw you sleep on has flattened into a map of your body. You nest into it like a bird who's given up on flying. The bucket in the corner. You've stopped smelling it. That's not a good sign. Sometimes new prisoners arrive. You can tell by the questions. What day is it? How long do trials take? Is there still snow outside? You don't answer. You've forgotten how to. One day you hear someone sobbing quietly, not out of pain, but confusion. Like they lost the thread of their own story. You understand that. You feel that. Because your story used to be about a man or woman who insulted a bishop, or trespassed on the wrong land, or tried to survive a winter without paying a tithe. Now you're the bones in the back corner, still soft, still moving, but slowly turning into a footnote. You once saw something shift in the shadows and thought it was a ghost, but it was just a prisoner being moved. You were disappointed. You kind of want the ghost, for variety. The guard still comes by. Rule. He looks older, or maybe you do. Hard to tell anymore. You don't speak. He doesn't either. He just lingers by the bars sometimes like he's trying to remember why you're even here. You used to think you'd be released. Eventually. That there'd be a knock, a scroll, a pardon, a sunrise. But no one's knocking. There's no sunrise. The only light you see now is the thin shaft through the ceiling slit, and even that seems dimmer. Or maybe the grime just finally reached it. Someone dies in the next cell. You hear it. A cough that turns into silence. No guards come. No priest. Just quiet. You wonder if they'll clear the body or just wait for nature to do it. You think about writing something on the wall. A final message. But what would it say till here? Tell the sky I said hi. Instead, you press your hand into the grime and make a print. Not for meaning, just proof, and you fall asleep often now. Not because you're tired, but because sleep is softer than reality. In dreams, the straw is warm. The bread has crust. Cedric tells stories. He's still around, by the way. You once caught him dragging what looked like a fingernail across the cell. Maybe he's trying to build something. Or maybe you're losing your mind. You ask yourself sometimes, what if I'm already dead? What if this is the punishment? Not fire. Not demons. Just this. Silence. Filth. Forgotten skin wrapped around waiting bones. Historians still debate how many prisoners were simply left. Never officially executed. Never freed. Just dissolved into the stone. They find bones now and then buried in old cells curled around bits of cloth or scribbles in Latin. One had a spoon tucked under his ribs. You wonder if you'll become one of them. You wonder if someone centuries from now will find your pebble shaped like a bird and try to guess what it meant. You hope they guess right. You sleep more, and yet strangely, it's peaceful. Because there's a moment just before your mind drifts off where the stone doesn't feel cold, where the silence hums like a lullaby, where you forget that the sky used to be blue, and in that moment, for the first time in forever, you are not afraid, not of dying, not of being forgotten, not of anything. You are still, you are soft, you are gone, and yet you sleep. The stone is cool beneath you now, and the air has settled into a kind of hush, deep and thick, like the world itself is holding its breath. You close your eyes. There's no more scraping, no footsteps, no porridge, no voices in the next cell arguing about saints or soup. Even Cedric the old rat has curled into a sleepy silence. Somewhere far off, water drips like a ticking clock that's finally lost interest in keeping time. You feel your own breathing, slow, soft, like cloth folding into cloth. There's nothing sharp anymore. No hunger, no cold, no corners digging into your ribs. Just the stillness. It stretches out like a blanket wrapping around you with quiet kindness. You drift not because you're weak, but because you've done enough. You've endured. You've remembered your name even when no one said it. You've found softness in hard places. You've laughed in the dark. You've made a pillow out of straw and a life out of less. And now you can rest. Let your shoulders go heavy. Let the breath leave slower. Let your eyes stay closed without fear that someone's watching. They're not. No one is. You are safe now, here in this moment, in this soft, soundless dark, and in that stillness where time means nothing, and every sorrow has finally settled you. Let yourself fade, slowly, gently, as if the cell were never a prison, but a cradle, and this sleep a kind, deep forever.